Hello, welcome. I'm here to do another custom palette with you all, and this time I'm going to do a BYOP for the month of November. If you're new here, my name is Charlotte. I love colorful and sparkly makeup, and I try and find ways to play with my makeup and have fun with makeup without always thinking about buying new things. I hope the lighting's gonna do okay for this video. It's a very gray day here. It is November and we've been having a string of gray days this week, but that is definitely in keeping with the theme of this palette. So hopefully we can just make it work. I have pulled out initially some shades from the new Glamlite Ghost Face palette, which I've already depotted. I actually have so far just depotted these shades because I really wanted them for this video, and I think that that whole color story is actually a really good color story for November. And November is my birth month, by the way, so I actually hate the month of November, but it does have a sort of special place in my heart all the same. And when I think about November days, I think about gray colors, I think about blues. I think about those sort of blue, dusky evenings where the sun is setting earlier than you expect it to. Maybe daylight savings time just happened. And sort of those evenings where you find yourself sitting in the dark, you realize you haven't turned on a light yet, and it's sort of just gotten dark around you. If you go outside, it might be chilly, drippy, drizzly, wet, and a sort of like gray-blue color. So yeah, I'm thinking a lot about grays, and personally I don't really wear gray, like straight grays or silvers. I don't like how they look on me, but that's not even what I'm talking about when I talk about November grays. Really, I'm talking about gray browns, gray greens, and gray blues. And there's definitely some like teal kinds of shades that I want to pull into this palette. I'm starting with these, and I'm going to, as with my previous BYOP videos, I'm going to speed you through me going through my eyeshadows and picking out a long list of shadows, and then we'll sort of talk through some decisions that go into the final palette selection. I will probably do a 15 pan palette that will fit into a little magnetic palette like this one. My eyeshadows are super disorganized right now, so just disclaimer on that. There's really no rhyme or reason to what you'll see in the palettes I'm pulling out, but that's fine. But I'm gonna set these aside for now. I know these are going on the long list, and I'm gonna start going through the rest of my magnetic palettes. As always, if you want to support my content or give me a little morale boost, go ahead and like and subscribe. I'm a big sucker for seasonal makeup, so there's going to continue to be seasonal BYOPs on my channel, as well as some duping the vibes videos I have coming down the pike. So stay tuned for those and subscribe if you want to see them in your feed. almost forgot about this shade. This is Frost from the Beauty Bay Earthy palette, and this is the tone that is really inspiring this palette. This is sort of what I'd like for the average or median tone in the palette to be. I love this color. I did my best to sort them into the kind of shade they are, and keep in mind I'm trying to learn like the theory of custom palette building, and one thing that I know it's important to take into account is what is the function of each shade. So I have like some lighter transition tones, some mid-toned mattes, some deeper mattes, some deeper shimmers, some mid-toned / lid shimmers, and then some lighter shimmers, including inner corner highlights. So I can see right away that I have a lot in this category, and this includes things that I would put in my inner lid or use as a topper or an inner corner highlight. I'm really into these shades recently, so I actually wouldn't mind having them sort of overrepresented in the palette. The other thing I'm noticing is that the vibe is a lot more purple than I intended or expected, and it's also looking quite ethereal. And again, this might not be coming through on camera because of the lighting, but I think overall the palette leans quite light. There's a lot of pastels over here, like I said, a lot of topper shades. So this is like, it's sort of got an ethereal vibe, verging on sort of silvery spring tones, if that's a thing. And I do want to make sure that it stays autumnal, so I want to keep some depth, some groundedness, but I do feel like I can let those toppers kind of shine as well. It's difficult to know where to start. Off the bat, I think I can eliminate this. I think it's the wrong tone. It's too pure, not gray toned enough or desaturated enough. I have two comparable shades here. This is from the Lisa Eldridge Sorcery palette. It's called Mercurial, and it's a purple green duochrome with a sparkly finish. The sparkles are more green, the base is a little bit more purple. And then that's pretty comparable to this shade Mirror Gleam from the Ghostface palette. I haven't compared these shades yet, but I'd say that the major difference, well, they have a difference in tone. And the Lisa Eldridge one is more sparkly. There, if I block some of the sunlight coming through, you can see the purple shimmer on this. So it's sort of like the opposite of the Lisa Eldridge shade. Actually, it's a green base with a purple shimmer, and the Lisa Eldridge is purple base with a green shimmer. I had like been really excited about this shade. It was one of the reasons I bought the Ghostface palette, and I was eager to depot it so I could use it in a November palette and just in November in general. But I'm not sure I need both of these shades, and I prefer the tones in this one because this has a vibrant purple shift. So I'm gonna put this to the side for now, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna keep this in the palette. I'm also sure that I'm gonna keep Frost in the palette. I'm also quite sure I want to keep this shade Satellite from the Earthy palette. It's a beautiful, like, greenish silver. I want to compare that to this Lisa Eldridge shade, actually. This is called Mage from the Sorcery palette. Oh, it's cooler toned, I think. Okay. So I was pretty sure I wanted to keep this in the palette, But now that I see it compared to Satellite, I think it's too similar. And I like Satellite better because it's sparklier. So I'm gonna boot this from the palette. I'm going like all out of order here, but I wanna try swatching this transition shade. This is a purplish gray, grayish purple. This is called Nightcall, and it's from the Colourpop It's a Mood palette. I really like this, and it's actually in my deck of panning right now, so I'm trying to get extra uses on it. And I want to compare that to some of these other transition tones that we have, like this sort of gray-brown from the Ghostface palette. This really fits the vibe. Like, this is the grayest thing I have out. The only thing is, I'm not sure whether it's like deep enough to be a transition tone. This is the cool gray color from the Glamlite Nearly Natural palette in comparison, and it's quite a bit deeper, but I do use that as a transition tone. So what I'm gonna do is pull this for now, and once I start playing with this on my eyes, if I need to pull in this cool brown to replace it as a transition tone, I will do that. But for now, I'm gonna put this to the side, and I'm gonna put this in with the palette. Yeah, I think I want to keep Nightcall. I have 5 so far, and I want to keep it to 15. I'm gonna swatch some like taupe shades now, because I know I want a cool taupe like lid shade. So this is Tombac. This is my go-to taupe within my collection. It's definitely got a purple base, so that's going to bring out that purple vibe in the palette, which I'm not sure I want to emphasize. I was leaning more green, blue, brown. Looking at this, it's beautiful. I just think it might be a little bit too purple. And then this is Vengeful Spirit from that Ghostface palette. I have not worn this on my lids yet. Oh, this is beautiful shadow. It's also very purple, but I'd say it's just ever so slightly more gray than, I'm sorry, this is Tombac from Glam Shop. It's ever so slightly more gray than the Glam Shop shade, although the Glam Shop shade is like shinier and more interesting, but I think I'm gonna keep this as a lid shade. And for now, get rid of Tombac because they're too similar. Let's swatch this. This is Supersonic from Looxi. I haven't worn this a ton, but I kind of conceptualized it as a blue-brown. But looking at it here, it's got a purple shift that I think is going to be too dominant. Oh, I don't know if that purple shift is actually coming up, but there's quite a strong purple shift that I think is going to pull out too much purple. That's a beautiful shade, though. Let's see, I also want to look at this shade Steel from the Midnight palette from Beauty Bay. And this is a little bit more blue. So I think this will help us keep some of those blue vibes in the palette. Even though there's a purple element to that too, it's much more of a cool blue purple. So I think for now I'm gonna put this in the palette, and we'll see if it ends up replacing that purplish Glamlite taupe. This is another Glam Shop shade that leans purple. It's called Pisara or Mushroom. And yeah, just looking at it now, I think it's gonna be too purple for the palette, so I'm gonna boot that. And along those same lines, I'm wondering if I should just boot this purple matte, even though this goes super well with all the shades that I'm looking at, so I'm hesitant to boot it. I think I can use these purple shimmers with like browns and possibly greens and like just knock back a little bit of that purple vibe, so I'm gonna boot this for now. Oh, I'm pretty sure I want to keep this shade. This is Splash from Looxi. It's a very beautiful topper slash light inner lid shade. Let me see, I'll block some of the light there. It's so shifty, hard to pin down. It's actually kind of similar to this shade Mercurial from Lisa Eldridge because it does have a bit of a purple base and a green shimmer on top. Oh, interesting. Those might be more similar than I want. Ooh, that's a bummer. Well, I want to keep Splash. It's more interesting, like it's got more colors in it than the Lisa Eldridge one. So I'm going to keep that for now. And I might go ahead and kick this one out of the palette. But all these decisions are like provisional, we'll see. I'm pretty sure I want to keep this shade, by the way. This is from the Mint to Be palette from Colourpop, and it's called Chill Factor. I really love this as like a very desaturated mint. For these deeper gray browns, I'm leaning toward keeping this one from Glamlite because it's a little bit more gray. And this is from the Ghostface palette, and it's called Shadows Back. This is from the Glaminatrix Nearly Natural palette, and it's, you can see it's a bit more brown, but it's a cool brown called Robe. That's really useful as a deepening shade. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do something similar with these guys. I prefer this tone, so I'm gonna keep that for now. If it turns out that on the eyes I need more depth, then I'll just replace it with this. I wanted to leave room in this palette for both silvery tones and golden tones, and this is a really interesting cool toned gold from the Earthy palette from Beauty Bay. It's called Palm. I love this shade because I find that cool toned golds are pretty unusual. And I want to compare it here to Midnight Robe from the Ghostface palette. This is silver. And I haven't used this one on the eyes yet, so I'm not sure if this can function as a topper or if it's too opaque for that. It's got a nice sparkly finish. It's got like a little bit of a bluish grayish tone. So let me compare that to Satellite, which has a greenish undertone. Those might be too similar, but I'm gonna keep both for now and we'll see. And I definitely want to keep this shade Palm. Again, I'm getting topper happy, but this is the shade Salted Caramel from Looxi. And what I like about this shade is like, I actually have both this shade and Cookie Dough, which is sometimes said to be a dupe for this. But I find that Salted Caramel has like a more teal shimmer compared to the truer blue shimmer on Cookie Dough. It has like a more vibrant shift, but I think that's actually kind of cool. So I think I want to keep this in the palette, and it can be like an inner corner shade, it can be a topper. The Looxi shades are the best toppers in my collection because they actually look so flattering. I think it's the moistness of this formula. They look really flattering layered over other shadows, whereas a lot of formulas I find they become too crusty and cakey when you layer them over other things. So these shades are really useful to me, and the same will go for Splash. That'll be a nice topper. Okay, I have 12 shades already in this palette. I think I need some like deeper shades because I need things to layer the toppers over basically to be able to create versatile looks. I'm gonna try swatching these deeper shimmers. Let's see. This is Wit from the Beauty Bay Earthy palette, and it has a kind of vibrant blue sparkle running through it. It doesn't look very reflective. It's a pretty dull black blue base, but yeah, there. You can just get the hint of those blue sparkles on top, which are quite a bright blue. So I think that would add a nice blue element to the palette. This is the shade Crisp from the Glamlite Dirty Martini palette. I really like this shade. This is like the queen of desaturated shades in my collection. Like it's just so gray. Like I want to say it's so brown. It's a very brown green, but even brown can be vibrant and saturated. And it's just so barely there in terms of the actual saturation of the color. I don't know how else to describe that. And it does have like a cool dark green shimmer and a bluish shimmer, so that's a really I really want to keep that in the palette, actually. The one hesitation I have is it too similar to Frost? Because when I was swatching these out in one of my comparison videos recently, like, they do have quite similar tones. They're very, very similar. Okay, interesting. Because I don't want to lose the blue. Like, I don't want to lose this shade because it feels like a true teal to me, whereas this feels like more like a forest green. But they do have extremely similar, like, effects. Okay, the color that Crisp averages out to is Frost. This is a bronzy green from a Rude Cosmetics palette. It's Unnamed. It's very satin, but that makes it work nicely as a base. And now looking at how actually cool and desaturated that is, I thought this would be too warm, but looking at it now, I definitely want to keep that in the palette. So I'm putting that in. Let me look at these greens. This is from Eldridge, Grotto. Very lovely, like, sheer, sheeny color. That could do some of the same work as Crisp. And then this is Olive Lover from the Dirty Martini palette from Glamlite. This part of my arm is less ideal for swatching, but I really want all of them. I've already sort of written these off, so I'm just gonna move them to the side so that it doesn't make things harder for me. Same with this shade. And I do need to swatch this shade here. I'm hoping this can be a deepening shade, but it might be a little warm. Okay, I think that will work as a deepening shade for the palette. And it does give me some of the green. Oh wait, there's one more deepening shade I wanted to test because it's more of a cool toned green from Eldridge. This is Troubadour. Jeez, okay, this is hard. In order to make some room, I am going to go ahead and boot this transition shade, this purpley one called Night Call. So all I'll have for transition is like this gray brown, and then, you know, I can blend it into this mid-toned mint as well as this mid-toned / deeper brown. So these are right now all the mattes I have in the palette. I guess I want to bring in at least one more deepening matte, and I'm looking at this undertone versus this one, and I think actually this matches this undertone, so that would make them pair well together. But on the other hand, I think that bringing this one in instead will give the palette some more versatility, and hopefully these won't look muddy blended together. But for now, I'm gonna do those as my mattes. I still have only 2 slots remaining in the palette. All right, if I bring Frost out, call that back into question, then I have 3 slots. So I can take 3 of these. And let me just double check that Salted Caramel is gonna be an okay topper for the tones I have here. I'll just swipe it there. I think that brings something kind of interesting actually to the color palette we have going on here. It brings something blue, and I also want to swatch out Splash just to make sure again that, yeah, that's what Splash is looking like, and it brings both gold and green. Ugh, okay. I'm so excited about those toppers. We still had like this one and this one, these 2 silvers sort of in question, so let me do kind of the same thing. That's the Glamlite silver. The Beauty Bay silver. Yeah, realistically, do I need both of those? Especially if I have blue coming in with Salted Caramel. I think I can probably axe this guy. Slash him, I guess I should say. This ghost face shade. Okay, beautiful. That leaves me 4 slots. So I can take 4 of these. And that I can do because I don't need all 3 of these greens. I'm gonna take these 2. Y'all, I'm second guessing myself on that silver I booted. So I swatched these out. This is from Ghostface. Vengeful Spirit. This is from the Midnight palette from Beauty Bay. It's called Steel. They're very similar, but they have different undertones. This one's a little bit warmer and browner. This one's a little bit cooler and more blue-gray, which I like. This one has more sparkle though, so it's like a more beautiful shadow in and of itself. But what I want to try is taking this blue topper, and maybe I'll take the silver topper too, just to put it to the test, since that's what I'm trying to make room for. Ooh, that's salted caramel over the taupier shade. There's salted caramel over the more blue shade. Ooh, it definitely brings that blue to the taupe, which was what I was wondering if it would do. So I might be able to actually just boot Steel, which would be a plot twist. Now I'm taking this bluish silver. Yeah, very similar tone to Steel. They don't really add that much to each other. And I'm gonna do that lightly tapped over the, yeah. All right, I think this convinces me. I think I can actually boot Steel, bring back this silver. This was solving a problem that didn't exist before, so. But I really like the idea of having a palette that relies heavily on topper shades. Actually, I think that's sort of what the Ghostface palette is doing. And I think that's why it's actually a very versatile color story, like against all odds, because everybody saw that palette come out and they were like, oh, it's gray, oh, it's black. But because of the more shifty, more colorful topper shades, you can top them in that palette. You can top them over brown, over gray, over black, over purple, over bluish gray. So like you actually have tons of options for complete looks in that palette, and I think it's so well conceived. So that's sort of like giving me inspiration to focus on base shades and topper shades in this palette, and then you get so much versatility in the finished looks that you can create. I can keep 2 of these shades, and against all odds, I think I'm gonna boot Crisp, even though this is like a gorgeous quintessential November shade for me. I think I'm gonna keep these 2 instead, and the reason is that because I have something filling that teal role that Crisp really fills for me, I kind of wanted to have a cool green option and a warmer green option, and these both do fit the vibe, even though they're less desaturated than Crisp is, and I love that about Crisp. Yeah, I definitely reserve the right to pull in Crisp for some of these looks, so that leaves me with these 2 deeper greens, and I'm happy about that. Okay, this time there's no real rhyme or reason to how I arranged this palette. I don't know, I just wanted to like distribute the colors kind of evenly across the palette. And I'm gonna go ahead and swatch the palette. In hindsight, I shouldn't have grouped the 2 silvers next to each other. God, I suck at swatching mattes. So unrewarding. Okay, so here's the final palette swatched. I'm really happy with this, and I'm also really surprised. I thought that all 5 of these shades were going to be shoo-ins for the palette, and it's definitely a slightly different vibe from what I pictured, very much less blue. Because I think I actually just have less of those desaturated blue tones than I thought. Like, I don't have any of those in the mattes, so that might have like made the palette have a bluer vibe. I'm also surprised with how hard it was to avoid purple in this palette, and obviously I do still have some purple tones in here. And so this is my sort of November vibes custom palette. I'm really excited about all the ways that I can combine these shades. I might end up doing like a 3 looks 1 palette with this or something like that. But time will tell if I get around to doing that. There's literally no way to know. Thank you so much for joining me during this time. I really appreciate you watching, liking, subscribing. All of that is so helpful. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!